Maseches Sotah Daf Yud Tes begins the third parak of the Masechta. The Mishnah, the new parak, begins by discussing the procedure of bringing the carbon mincha of the Sotah, how it's brought, and in what order it takes in the other steps of the Sotah. So the Gemara describes that the husband that took the carbon mincha from the kfifa mitzvahs, from the basket that was woven of a material called mitzvahs, kfifa mitzvahs, an Egyptian style of the basket. And he would take the mincha, he would take the flour and the oil, and he would put it into a klisharis. At that point, it became niskadesh, and then he would put it all in her hands. And now the Kohen took over, and the Kohen would put his hands under her hands, like is the halacha in every korban mincha. The Kohen and the owner together hold it, and then they would do tenufa. They would wave it. The Gemara will discuss what is the makar that tenufa is required. After that, they brought it to the mizbech, to the southwest corner. The Kohen took off a kmitza, which functioned as a shchita. He burned the kmitza on the mizbech, and the rest was eaten by the kohanim. Then he also made her drink the water. The question then is, what is the order? So the Gemara quotes Machlokes. Tanakama says first she drank, and then the carbon mincha was brought. Rabbi Shimon says that's kosher b'di'eved, but l'chadchila. First you bring the carbon mincha, and then afterwards you drink. She drinks, like it says, v'achar yashkas isha samayim. The Gemara now begins. The Gemara's first question is, how do you know that there is a mitzvah of tenufa? So the Gemara says that Rabbi Elazar, that's Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas, said to Rabbi Shaya of his generation. There was an older Rabbi Shmaya, there was an older Rabbi Shaya, and we're not talking about him, it was the Rabbi Shaya of his generation. He said to him, you shouldn't sit on your feet, meaning don't make yourself comfortable until you explain where do we know the halacha that a carbon mincha of a seder requires waving. So the Gemara says, what do you mean, where do you know? The Torah says explicitly it says v'henif. So the question was, how do you know that it should be done with the owner, that the owner has to be involved, meaning with the woman? So Gemara says it's a gzeir shava from the word yad. It says yad here, and it says yad in the parasha of Shlamim. It says v'lokach hakohen miyad ha'isha, and in Shlamim it says yadav tiviena. And just like over there, there's the kohen involved. Here also the kohen is involved, and just like over here, the owner is involved. There also the owner is involved. So you have to have both the owner and the kohen. So what happens, he puts his hands under the hands of the owner and they wave together. Gemara now asks on the next part where we discuss what the order is of the carbon and the hashka. Gemara says, what do you mean? We just described the whole carbon. Then you're asking me, should he be makar of it first before the hashka? You just told me that he's makar of the whole thing. What else is left to be makar of? They tell me he should be makar first. Meaning the Gemara at this point didn't understand. Then now we're going back and saying the whole description that we just said of this hakrava is that before or after the hashka. The Gemara thought you described everything that's done, and now we're discussing when should he be makar. But there's no hakrava left. So the Gemara says no, we meant this which we described all along. This entire description of the hakrava, is that took place before or after the hashka? That was what the Gemara's whole discussion was. The Gemara now goes deeper into this machlokes between Rabbi Shimon and the Tanakama. The Gemara brings in a brisa that has a third opinion. It's Rabbi Kiva, who also holds like Rabbi Shimon, that first you the carbon mincha and then afterwards you do the hashka. And Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shimon have a difference in how they darshan the psukim. So the brisa together with the Gemara that comes afterwards explains as follows. The Torah says v'hishke 3 times. It says v'hishke, then it says v'achar yashke ha'isha, and then it says v'hishke again. So what are these 3 things for? So one of them is to teach me the actual order of the thing itself. Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shimon hold that it's to teach me, according to them, that first you bring the carbon and then va'achar yashke, and then afterwards you do the hashka. The difference is, what are the other hashkas for? So Rabbi Shimon holds that the first hashka is to teach that if you were mashke and afterwards you brought the carbon, b'di'eved, you did it out of order, it's still kosher. And the last hashka is to teach that if the Megillah was erased and then the lady says, I don't want to drink, she's still not admitting, but she says, I don't want to drink, which is her option. She has a right to do that generally. But if she says it after it's already erased, that means that the erasure was for nothing, then we force her to drink. That is Rabbi Shimon's opinion. The Rabbi Kiva learns the psukim slightly differently. He says that the hashka is to teach that you force her to drink. He only mentions 2 hashkas, and he doesn't mention that b'di eved, if he did it out of order, it's okay. He doesn't make that drasha. Now the Chachamim, quoted in our Mishnah, the Chachamim learned the 3 hashkas differently. They learned that the first hashka is to teach you that first you do the hashka, and then afterwards you do the carbon. Because at first it says hashka, and then it says carbon. Hi, what does it mean when it says va'achar yashke? That's to teach me that you can't make her drink before you erase. So when I ask, what do you mean before you erase? How can you, if you didn't erase yet, there's no water. So we're referring to where you erase partially, but there's still some vague mark left, so that you can't do. It's only after it is fully erased that you have a right to be mashke. And the last hashka, where it says it the 3rd time, is to teach that if it was erased, then she says she doesn't want to drink, so then you force her to. Now, the Brisa phrases it as, until she's mekabel shua, you don't make her drink. Whereas Medaik, you don't make her drink, but you do write the Megillah. And that's a kasha because Rava said that Megillah Sotah that is written before she's mekabel shua doesn't count. So where it says Kedinas, but it's a wrong diak. Don't make the diak. Really, it means to say that you shouldn't write it either. The Gemara asks, there's a steer in Rabbi Akiva. Here Rabbi Akiva seems to say that if she decides she doesn't want to drink after the water's already been prepared and the shame has been erased, you force her to. But we have Rabbi Akiva that says it differently. So let's see that Brisa. The Gemara quotes the Brisa as follows. Rabbi Akiva says that they forced her, they put a metal toothed bar in her mouth to hold her jaw open, so that if she would change, that there was once the water was created by the erasure, so that if she changes her mind, they would force feed her the water. Now, Rabbi Akiva says as follows. He says, what's the point? The only point of making her drink the water is to check if she's tahar or tameh. By her refusing to drink, she's making clear that she is tameh. So what's the point in making her drink the water? Okay, but then he continues, and he says, the only time that you force her to feed it is if the kaimitz was already karav. If the kaimitz wasn't karav, so then she could change her mind. If the kaimitz was karav, then she can't, and then you force feed her. So how does that answer his kasha? The point of the water is to check her, and you already know that she's guilty because she's refusing to drink it. So what does he mean? So the Gemara says what he means to say is as follows. It depends why she's refusing. If she's refusing, but she's perfectly seems healthy and fine and confident. So you see, this was her plan all along. She was planning all along never to drink, and then it's evil that she had us erase it into the water. We would say that it's clear that she obviously, this is what her plan was all along, and obviously she's guilty, and she never planned to drink in the first place. And therefore, Rabbi Akiva is saying there's no point in having her drink, just assume she's guilty and finished. Now, if, however, she's trembling, so then that shows that really she intended to drink. And it's because of fear, that's why she's not drinking. She's afraid that even though she's innocent, perhaps she's worried that something will happen. She doesn't trust that the water won't hurt her. So in that situation, there could be a tzad to allow her to not have to drink. And it would depend when she said she doesn't want to drink. And there we say that if the kaimitz was already karav, then you will make her drink. Because at that point, it was already correct to prepare the water. So if the kahana prepared the water at that point, then it's too late. If, however, the kaimitz wasn't karav, even if the Kahanim already prepared the water, then it would be shaloi kedin. They didn't have a right to prepare it yet. And therefore, it will be their own problem. And you would not make her drink even if she's chayzer at that point. So more says the kasha Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Akiva, because over here, he says that it's the mechika that's a problem. And here he says it's the hakrava of the kaimitz that makes a difference. So my answer is two different Tanaim explaining what Rabbi Akiva said.